Hey everybody, before we start this episode of Tabletop Babble, I just wanted to let you know that this episode is brought to you by D&D Beyond. Beyond! Why are they D&D Beyond? Because they are the official digital tool set of Dungeons and Dragons. That's right. You can go check it out right now for free. The basic rules are up there, plus any other free supplements like the Elemental Evil Player's Companion. Build some characters, play around with it, see what you think. They got other features that are in beta that you can check out. You can check out their whole roadmap. You can see where they're going because they're constantly making updates. Plus, lots of other free content like articles from James Hake, Dungeon Commander, Ashley Warren, and videos from Todd Kenrick. There is so much awesome for you to explore for free. And when you get there, you're going to be like, hey, you know what? I should probably pay for these awesome digital tools because they are going to up my game, especially if you're a game designer. Oh my gosh, they help so much. So go check it out at dndbeyond.com. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. On the show, I am talking with C. Stephen Ross and Brendan Flattery of Defy Danger. These are the incredible minds behind the amazing products like 5th edition Team Deathmatch and Avarice, which is what we're talking about right now. Just what is Avarice? A really, really fun story role-playing dungeon building game. It's awesome, and you can check it out right now. So let's dive into this conversation because I don't want to make you wait a moment longer to hear about it. Okay, everybody, now I am here with two giants in the RPG industry, or should I say dwarves in the RPG industry.
Heck yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So let's go around the table and real quick and say who you are and what you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games. Ross, let's start with you.
Cool, yeah, I have many names, but most know me as Ross. I head up Defy Danger DDE Adventures, which is like a real small-time indie publisher. We produce, RPGs, a lot of D&D stuff, and we try our best to get a little wacky with things, to do things a little bit outside the norm, a little unexpected, and push boundaries. That's kind of what we're out here to do. Like, there's so many little indie publishers that are out right now, we're in kind of a golden age. So if everyone else can do it, well, let's do something a little different. So our latest incarnation, our latest game that we're coming out with is called Avarice. We're going to be talking about that in a little bit here, of course. But we've also done 5th edition Team Deathmatch. We have a couple of 5th edition adventures under our belts and a couple small-time little indie RPGs.
Yes, Defy Danger is a great company, and I'm sure if people haven't checked it out yet, they will after this podcast because it is awesome. And Brendan, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Yeah, so my name is Brendan. I work a lot with Ross just on these games. I've been doing some editing work for him. I helped co-author 5TDM, 5th edition Team Deathmatch. And for Avarice, I've been doing edits and I've been doing some layouts. So my background's in publishing. I've got a lot of kind of general skills related to editing, related to design, layout, stuff like that. So Ross and I have been working closely on Defy Danger products for a few years. Starting with Crush the Rebellion. That was, I think, the first one, which was a lot of fun.
Well, I am excited to have you both on here. And I'm excited to talk about dwarves because they are one of my favorite fantasy ancestries, races, species, whatever you want to call them. I love dwarves.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. We were chatting about this, and we were talking about how a couple months ago you ran like a Twitter poll, elves versus dwarves, and elves won out by just a hair, and we're like, oh my god, that is garbage. I call BS, fake news.
I think that happened the same day we tested Avarice in Toronto in a live match too. Yeah, it was like the same weekend.
Yeah, it was like right around the time when we were like really getting serious about this. Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned that. So I have the poll in front of me because I wanted to bring it up. And yeah, it blew up the poll. It's definitely the biggest poll I've ever had too. It has 5,667 votes. And it is 51% elves, 49 dwarves.
So, I mean, that tells you there's like just shy of 3,000 hippie scum that needs to get boiled in magma.
I demand a recount personally. I think we should do this again.
I mean, it's close enough. Certainly, we should do it again. So, and there were There were moments where it was flipped and there were moments where it was 50-50. It was crazy. It was crazy. So I'm excited you brought this up because I love dwarves and I wanted to see dwarves win. And I'm shocked, honestly, that they did this well against elves. But people love them. People love dwarves. So what made you want to write a game about dwarves?
The heart and soul of this game is really my deep love and appreciation for the video game Dwarf Fortress, which is this like indie video game. It has like kind of like an infamous reputation out there as being like so bizarre and so difficult to comprehend and really difficult to play, and that's all true. And the end result of playing it, though, like once you get over the terrible UI and the zero graphics and all of the things that like really turn people off, like if you go on and do a search for Dwarf Fortress stories, you come upon the most amazing RPG tales ever told. Like stuff that is just completely bonkers off the wall that just got generated organically out of these like random elements and just during procedural play of going through this video game. And they're just so compelling and so awesome. And all of those like really great stories, they need like, I don't know, minimum 10 hours of gameplay, more like 20 or 40 or something like that to get in there. And I was like, whoa. How about I distill that down? I have some skill here with the tabletop. I want to be able to generate and share those kind of amazing stories that everyone tells to their friends and remembers for years on end. I want to create those stories in like 3 hours. Can we do that? So then I was like, all right, how do I do that? And I've been noodling with this thing for years and years. And it wasn't until like just this calendar year, just 2019, that I really started figuring it out. And I was like, oh, okay. I had been approaching it from kind of like, how do I replicate Dwarf Fortress, the video game, and get like, and I was focusing on all these like really crunchy technical mechanical things, like real detailed, like Microsoft Excel, the RPG. And it was like, I was just hitting a wall. I was getting some things right, but just other things were just like clunky and painful. And then I was like, you know what? At the end of the day, it's the stories. You got to put the stories first. And I totally revamped it, reimagined it as a more of a story-based RPG, more in the lines of like Blades in the Dark, which it takes inspiration from. And there's a Jason Morningstar game called The Skeletons, where you're just like drawing out fortresses or your tomb and stuff like that. And like all that's kind of coming together. And I'm like, this is what I want. This is how it goes.
As players in the game, you take on the role of dwarves, I assume? Like everybody's a dwarf?
That's right. So every player is actually an entire clan of dwarves, each with their own like unique wants and desires and sensibilities. You randomly generate them from a series of D100 tables. So like every dwarven clan really admires and appreciates, for example, one type of creature, and that's randomly determined. And if you really want to pick it, that's fine. But we have 100 different creatures that you can pick from. And then you got to like talk about like, well, why do you like this creature? Like what like cool thing about it that you like? For example, like some dwarves really like humans for their tall stature. Other dwarves really like camels for their jutting teeth and things like that. And it's like these goofy little role-playing game elements that when you have a bunch of them and they're pretty quick and easy to put together onto your character sheet, but it informs how you design the fortress. So a lot of the game is all about like drawing and stuff like that. By trade, I'm in the construction industry. I'm an engineer, and I'm kind of like a little bit of a wannabe architect, to kind of like put it on the layman's terms. And so like I tried to get into architecture school, and they're like, "Oh, dude, your drawings really suck. You can't do
it." Good enough for tabletop, though.
Right. Yeah, good enough for tabletop. So a lot of this game is about drawing out rooms and building your fortress and doing that. So when you have all these different elements that come in, some things are like kind of like you don't really care about on your character sheet. Whatever, I don't care that my clan really likes camels or whatever's going on. But other elements are like, oh, this really speaks to me. Like, oh, my clan worships a god whose sphere of influence is crystals. So then whenever I draw out my rooms that I'm drawing, I'm going to have a crystal motif and stuff like that. And you really, it gives you a little spark of creativity and inspiration to get artistic and feel good about it.
That is awesome. I love so much about this game already. It sounds like it's like partially Sim. You know what I mean? Like it reminds me of Sim City, for lack of a better comparison, in that like you're drawing out these spaces and that sort of thing. But then there's this role-playing game, story game aspect to it too. Brendan, how did you get involved?
I'm kind of just been going to conventions like Defy Danger East with Ross, playing a lot of these games. We brought him up to Toronto to run Aegon's Conquest because it's awesome, and I thought Toronto would love it, and it ended up working out really well. And that night afterwards, we grabbed two of the guys. We didn't even know these guys. They just came over to the Airbnb we were sharing and just played out some Avarice. And we had, I think, a better time doing that. Like Aegon's was great, but Avarice was. Like I was a little hesitant at first about it's a drinking game. Well, it's first of all, that's something to mention. And so there's a lot of booze. And dwarves, and a good point is they don't like to drink the same drink twice in a row. That's written into the rules. And we just had this fantastic time. Like the other part is like the Jenga tower.
Oh, and real quick mentioning like. Yeah, okay, there's rules about drinking. Drinking is not required in this game whatsoever.
Absolutely not, yeah. Yeah, and so then he tapped me. He's like, "Do you want to edit this?" And I jumped. I was like, "Yes, absolutely."
So, okay, I have so many questions right now. My mind is brimming. Okay, so you play a clan of dwarves. Does everyone play a clan of dwarves? Is there a game master too?
There is a game master. So all the players are a clan of dwarves, and then every 2 player turns, the game master pulls out a card. A random event card, and kind of most of the details are structured, but there are a little bit of elements in there that you need a human operator to be able to interject some direction onto. The game master also determines the name of the fortress and the fortress's purpose. So like it's kind of like the premise is all these dwarves are sent out into the wilderness, and which is like full of terrible beasts and dragons and all sorts of horrors. And the reason is the dwarven kings and queens from the mountain homes have decided that they need some new thing. So the most basic is you need to go out into a frontier settlement and just establish a new dwarven civil city, right? And then it could be like, oh, well, actually, we're at war with the elves or the humans or whoever, and you need to make a military base. Or we need a prison colony, or there was a failed expedition out here and we want to reclaim the ruins. There's a whole bunch of different scenarios for that. And that determines your starting character, like the starting events that are there when your dwarves arrive. And then the name of the fortress is there for the game master to try to plant the seeds of where they kind of want the narrative to go, or where they're hoping it goes. And then, so if you name your fortress, Crag of the Bronze Titan, it kind of plants a seed into the player's minds, oh, there should probably be a Bronze Titan around here or something like that. So when they start building and creating this shared world together, they kind of riff off of that.
Oh, cool. Wow, there are so many aspects to this, in a very cool way. There's a lot of layers going on here that I love.
Yeah, it's very dense. It's not a long game in terms of rules. I think we ended up at 50 pages, 52 or somewhere in there. Right. There's a lot of depth to it.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. So you sit down with your friends, you start to play this game. Is this the sort of game that every time you play it, you're a new clan, or can you have a campaign mode where you continue from where you left off?
Yeah, so every time you play, every time you play, at the end of it, you lose. So that's kind of a premise here. So every fortress is brand new, and every fortress is wildly different. There's so many different random elements and emergent gameplay that comes out. Things are just so different all the time. So the replay values, they're every time I run this, people are I want to play again. But yeah, so at the end, so one of the main mechanics here is taking some inspiration from Dread. Is there's a Jenga tower, and that Jenga tower represents the mental health, stress, and overall well-being of the fortress. So dwarves, of course, as you know, can get very angry very quickly. And when they do that, they start tantruming and going into a rage. And then this can kind of spiral out of control, and other dwarves get angry that there's clans that are in a rage, and there's dwarves that are digging too deep. Dwarves always dig too deep. They always are too greedy. Hence the name Avarice, right? The dwarves are always too greedy. They're always digging too deep. So every fortress is doomed to failure because they just don't know. They can't stop and they won't stop. And eventually the tower will always fall, and that signals the destruction of the fortress. It's kind of like a mandala, like the sand art. Like you spend all this time building this amazing, beautiful thing, and then at the end, it's just all gone, and you just need to like come to grips with that and just enjoy the ride.
Yeah, live in the moment. It's a very much mindfulness kind of game. Like experience it now and remember it fondly later. Every player also gets the opportunity to then sort of narrate like what happened during the collapse and what happens to their clan, and all sorts of good stuff. And you can see new opportunities after that if you wanted to maybe try again. But I think there's a lot of catharsis, a lot of good resolution built into it.
Nice. And so, how does it all come together time wise? About how long is a session of this game?
So the shortest I've ever run it is 2 hours, and that was moving really quick. And then the longest is the time that Brendan and I played didn't really count because the rules weren't really in place. But the longest is really like 6 hours in the kind of. It depends on how long you want to drag it out. So there are some groups that are just like much more relaxed about things, and then there are some groups who are much more focused. And then the game always ends, you always lose, but there are ways and strategies in the game to prolong that and thus, stave off the inevitable and be able to develop a more cool, more awesome looking fortress.
And then, of course, you were saying this idea of it's like sand art. You do have that map kind of at the end too, right?
Yeah. The most recent playthrough I went through. So we've been doing maps on 11 by 17 sheets, which are fairly easy to get. I mean, you can get 11 by 17s in the store.
Yeah, definitely.
And at the end of it, one of the players was like, "This is so good. I'm taking this home and I'm putting this on my refrigerator." They're just like, because like it's this community thing. Like every player that was there all contributed to that in their own way, and everyone was like had a real part and a real investment into the game and into what happened in this shared world.
Yeah, it almost sounds like a great way to do prep for another RPG too, right? Like,
oh yeah, you could be like, "Hey, I need a ruined dungeon. Let's do this."
Like, yeah, by the end of it, you're like, cool. And next week we're playing D&D, and I'm ready to go. Like you've got all that. That's so awesome.
Yeah. Remember all those artifacts you built? They're all hidden in there.
Nice. That's awesome. So talk to me about this, the optional drinking aspect of the game. How does that work?
So in the base game, like the after you've done your embark, which is character creation, fortress creation, and getting everything kind of set up, you start playing, and it's again very inspired by Blades in the Dark, where you have a dice pool, you're gathering them all up. They're D12s because that's the more dwarf-like of dice. And you roll, and then the highest value, you just do it. The lowest value, something totally bad happens, and you don't do it. And then the middle value, which comes up the most, is you do this thing that your clan is proposing to do, such as build a new trap, or build a brewery, or build a barracks, or build a tower for crossbow dwarves, or something like that. But you also pull from the tower and take a drink. So that comes up pretty often. There's also another thing where, just like in Blades in the Dark, you can get help on your skill checks. If you eschew all help and you stand as a dwarven clan alone, you may then go into a rage. You must stand up at the table and go into a soliloquy, a monologue, about how the world has conspired against your dwarven clans and how unfair it is and what kind of grudge you have and how this just pisses you off. And you go into this whole rant. At the end of it, you finish your drink. The bonus is that you get to enhance the effect of your skill. So that means like if you're doing something totally wild and the GM's like, you're trying to beat off this invading goblin army with your fisher dwarf skill, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. And then you can say, but I'm going into a rage. And they're like, okay, that makes sense. You can do it.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's a silly game.
Yeah, but it sounds so fun. It sounds really fun.
It is. It's a blast.
So, Brendan, as you're going through and you've play tested and you've refined stuff, what do you love about this game?
I love the tower element and sort of the twist that it takes on the traditional dread model, where you're just pulling the tower from the tower to try to make a skill check and avoid dying. In this case, it's very much a personal challenge in dread. Like everybody's sharing the tower, but you're just trying to be the not the one to knock it over and escape the big bad that's chasing you. Where in this game, everybody is so very much invested in what that tower is doing. I remember bumping the table and everybody lost their minds at me. It was all good, but it was so deeply emotional. Everybody was really, really checked in, and because it's wrapped up in sort of the health of this settlement as a whole, and the challenges that everybody faces, I think it's more communal. It's a bigger opportunity to have everybody just involved. I love that part of it.
Hey everybody, we are just going to take a quick break because I wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble is brought to you by 1985 Games and the Dungeon Craft Kickstarter. What is Dungeon Craft? Well, it lets you build your own battle maps. That's right, it's a book that has over 1,000 terrain pieces within that you can use in Dungeons and Dragons or any other medieval fantasy tabletop RPG. These are incredible. They're flat. They're ready to go. You can lay them down over any existing map you have. So if you want to lay out your battle map, boom, and then you got the street, then boom, 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 you're placing buildings everywhere. You're placing trees. You're building a forest. You're building all kinds of awesome. You will not break the bank with this. These are inexpensive, and you'll have over 1,000 pieces ready to go. Plus, guess what? They got some hellish pieces ready to go for Baldur's Gate Descent into Avernus. They also have some watery pieces for your Ghosts of Saltmarsh game and so much more awesome. So go check it out. They've got bundles everywhere starting as low as $30. $30. Go check it out. They're blowing through stretch goals. They have more than doubled their very ambitious goal of 75 grand, and they are just shooting for the moon. So go check it out. Search for Dungeon Craft on Kickstarter or go to 1985games.com and tell them DSPN sent you. Let's get back to the babble. So, okay, let's get into it. Do you get a bonus if you have a beard when you play this game?
You don't. There's not a specific bonus there, but every time I've played it, I have just like a stock of fake beards that I bring around. So like on our blog and all that, like we have photos from the actual plays from all the playtests, and you'll just see people standing up and ranting and have these fake beards on. Oh, actually, on our YouTube channel, we recorded a bunch of them of the rages. And you'll just see, like, I remember Ashley, this, like, thin little woman. She's there with this, like, really nice red-haired beard and just, like, ranting about how, like, she hates nature or trees or something. But everyone's, like, kind of hammered. So it's, like, it's fun. It's fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds great. So this is a thing that people can pick up when? How soon can they get this?
So by the time this comes out, this podcast comes out, it should be out. It'll be coming out this Tuesday, May the 7th. And it'll be available on DriveThruRPG. We are we're very strict about doing the pay what you want model on this. And that's because Dwarf Fortress, which was such a huge influence on us, does a similar kind of thing. So Dwarf Fortress, the video game, is always free, always will be, or at least always will have a version that's free, and then has been surviving for like 11 or 13 years or some craziness like that, strictly off of donations. So we wanted to match that. So we're doing that.
I have to say, I did not know what Dwarf Fortress was until we sat down to have this conversation. It looks incredible. I'm looking at screenshots and stuff now.
Yeah. It's slated to come out, I think, next month on Steam, which is like and then they got a third-party video game developer to give it graphics and a better user interface.
Yeah, so here's a question. Would you describe this as similar to like a tower defense game?
There's definitely elements of that. So there's invading armies and external threats and like horrible monsters that are coming out at you from the surface and also from below. From the every game starts with Cave of Forgotten Beast, where like random humongous, crazy creatures can just like pop up. There are also demons in the game from under the magma sea. So there's definitely defensive elements to this, and that's a big part of that. A big part of it is, of course, like just mining out metals and being able to smelt them down into weapons and things like that. There's also just like the health of the fortress. You got all of these people living underground in these like honestly kind of terrible conditions, and you need to attend to their psychological needs. So dwarves are very greedy. They have the avarice. They always want more possessions. So that kind of thing comes up a lot in the events cards, where it'll say your dwarves are now have the greed. They need to get new crowns and bracelets and small little trinkets to wear, or they want statues commemorating their ancestors, or they want a tomb to commemorate the fallen, or things like that. They're always like trying to expand more. So there's a lot of like management of how do we improve the fortress, and also from the to kind of defend it from the inside, from the dwarves' mental state. Also, at the same time, there is a flight of rocks that are coming out and picking up dwarves from the surface and throwing them against the cliffs. So you got to like kind of balance those two things.
This I cannot wait to play this game. This sounds so awesome. Okay, so because it sounds like the game involves a lot of drawing and building a fortress together, it sounds like you could easily play it on a virtual tabletop too, right?
Yeah. So we've been looking into that and trying to plan out a live stream to show off the game, because there's a number of different free apps and websites out there that are like communal whiteboard spaces, and then there's a variant online that we can pick up real quick to simulate a Jenga tower just by some like dice rolls and like kind of like a randomized approach to how like it would go. Or you could just say, okay, after 24 pulls, the tower falls apart. So there's a lot of ways to be able to do this.
So let's talk a little bit about the name, right? Is Avarice. So obviously we're talking about greed. We're talking about greedy dwarves, right? That's sort of a thing they've been known for a long time. So how does greed play into all of this?
In a couple of ways. There's a lot of conditions, we call them bad thoughts, that can sort of get tacked onto to a clan and sort of influence what they or how difficult it becomes to do things at the end of each of their turns, stuff like that. And greed is definitely one of them. It's probably the most important one of the easiest ones to hand out, because by their very nature, dwarves, just like Russ said, they want to go deeper. Everybody's also, in addition to being enamored with a type of creature, they're enamored with a type of mineral or a type of gemstone that is drawn on the map at the start of the game. So they all have a goal very much in mind. And at the very, I find at the core of this game is sort of just an expression of tragedy, of just going after something so hard that you eventually lose and die. But it's all about the journey along the way.
So you mentioned demons. Are Balrogs or similar a thing here?
Yeah, 100%, man. 100%. As soon as you try to get adamantium, you find the magma sea. As soon as you get magma, you run the risk of just like, oh, demon invasion, whoops. Demons are an invasion that can never be defeated, and it's like once that happens, you're like, all right, we're just running the clock, because we're just gonna. This is it. This is endgame.
That's so great, and what I love about this is there's so many elements of. You said Dwarf Fortress, and I'm feeling like the tower defense vibe. I'm also feeling like a little bit of a Minecrafty vibe, right? Because you're
definitely.
You're mining and you're building stuff and you're upgrading, and just until the inevitable happens.
Right? Yeah, and like it's kind of like some people struggle with like. They're like, well, what was the point of that? Why did we even play if like we're always going to lose? And there's a couple different ways to approach that. And one way I see it is like, okay, let's see how long we can keep this. We can juggle these balls in the air until everything falls apart, and like how awesome of a fortress we can make, how creative and crazy we can get. Because there's just like the combination of random elements really creates some, like, again, just like the video game creates some like really amazing stories. Like one thing that comes up kind of often. There's one card called a were creature, right? For example. So it's like for maybe a werewolf shows up in the countryside and it's like a real pain in the ass and blah, blah, blah. But it's not necessarily a werewolf. It's a D100 random creature type. So you could get a were leopard or a were yak, were giraffe, things like that, like funny, crazy things.
Nice. That's awesome. A were giraffe, guys.
Yeah.
I am in for this game.
It's giraffe twisted into humanoid form.
Well, and we play all kinds of games, particularly on our phones, that we are bound to lose, right? Like the Endless Runner, or if you played totally. Fall Down on your old TI-83 Plus, like I did, right? Like that was all about like how long could you last?
How far can you go?
Yeah. It's a roguelike in a way, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think it's cool. And I think the other thing about story games is like, even if you do, slay the dragon and finish the story heroically, it's still over, and still what you have from that is the experience, right?
It's the journey. Totally.
Yeah, exactly. And so this is all about the journey too. So what sort of challenges have you had to overcome when you first sat down to design this game?
Well, definitely, like we talked about before, like the first couple of several iterations of this game, I was a little bit too fixated on trying to replicate exactly the video game and like the more technical aspects of it, and that was definitely a challenge. And then as we started getting into we kind of came into our own and realized this is, again, the stories first. I think one of the challenges was tweaking that balance to get to the right level and thread the needle as to like how long the game wanted to go. So like when I played last with Brendan, so I live in Baltimore, Brendan lives in Toronto, right? So we don't see each other very often. So when I was up there and we got to play, like that version of the game, like it wasn't hard enough. And then the game just kind of like dragged on, and you just be like, this really should have ended like an hour or two ago.
Yeah.
So just like threading that needle and being like, okay, this is the right amount where it feels like you really did something interesting with the game. You really contributed to it. You really had a good time and built something out of it. But it didn't drag on, and it felt like it came to a good natural conclusion.
That's awesome, and it sounds like it is such a key for this game. So let me tell you something. I have a confession to make, which is that I am terrible at drawing. Like real bad.
Stick figures. Yeah, I mean, like you really don't need to do a lot.
It's part of the fun.
Yeah.
So it's totally fine if you're not a good artist.
Oh yeah, man! You should see some of these pictures, like Brendan's brother did, for example. It's like, dude, Patrick, what is that?
Plus, like we're half a bottle of scotch into it already.
Yeah. Right? Oh yeah, that's.
It's true. I'm a bad dancer, but closer to the end of the wedding, I'm a better dancer. So it's
well, you think you are anyway. Yeah.
So this is awesome. Okay, so if people want to learn more about this game, where should they go and what should they do?
Yeah, so go to our blog, which is defydanger.com, and we have right as we are speaking, we have a number of preview materials, and we have some actual play images from the game, including like some finished fortresses and what like chaos that actually looks like. And then you can go to our YouTube channel, just look for Defy Danger, and we have a bunch of clips, mostly of like the rages and stuff like that, and what like drunk people wearing dwarf beards and being told to act like a dwarf, an angry dwarf, really act like. And they get to see some fun times.
That's awesome. So let me ask you a question. So what's next after this? Are we going to see the 2% more popular elves game come to fruition?
It's funny. I've been just this week. People were like, "Hey, you could do like avarice is like one of the 7 deadly sins. Could you do pride and call that the elf game?" And like, hey, maybe we can do an expansion. Elves in the trees, right?
Oh, that's awesome. Yes. Now I'm trying to think about other sins and who they could be and that sort of thing.
Orcs are wrath.
Hobbits are gluttony.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I am here for this line of games. This is great.
And we played the lust game in very special circumstances.
Right. Exactly.
Not on the stream.
Before we go here, where can people find you, Brendan?
I'm on Twitter at BPD Flattery. Flattery, just like the word in the dictionary.
Excellent. And where can people find you, Ross?
I'm mostly on Twitter as well, at C. Stephen Ross, and also our company DDE Adventures is at DDE Adventures.
Excellent. Well, this was awesome, people. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this is fun. Always happy to talk about dwarves.
That was a great interview. I'm definitely going to have those guys back. I love the way they think about games. It's so good. It's so good. You know, people, if you want to help support this show, you can head on over to patreon.com/Introcaso. That's patreon.com/Introcaso. And you can pledge for as little as $1 a month. You can help decide the direction this show is going. Super fun stuff. Plus more content from me at higher pledge levels. Go check it out. Patreon.com/Introcaso. And if you're already donating, thank you very much. And if you cannot donate, there's another way you can support the show. Head on over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. No matter what country you're in, if you leave a 5-star review, I'll read it out loud and credit the person who left it. You can make me say anything you want, like Batsuitman. Batsuitman says, "I'm not a tabletop player." Wow, that is Batsuitman. That is fascinating. Thank you. That's just a side note from me. That's not in there. So let me start over. "I'm not a tabletop player. I just love fantasy settings. This show scratches my fantasy itch because it dissects tabletop gaming, giving me insight into the richness of those game worlds and introduces me to the creatives behind them. James Introcaso is a talented interviewer, just as knowledgeable as he is humble and a creative himself. So the dialogues he has with other creatives are so stimulating that it feels like you could be at the table with them. This is made more impressive when you realize his guests aren't in studio. Tabletop Babble has excellent sound quality. Episodes are fairly long, but they move at such a brisk pace and engage the listener the whole way through that they feel way too short. That's okay, though, because new episodes are uploaded regularly, and there is a huge back catalog." Wow, thank you so much, Batsuitman. I really appreciate that. And people, we do have a great back catalog. There are some amazing guests that I am extremely humbled by when I interview them. So go check it out. Listen to that back catalog if you have not already, and be like Batsuitman and leave us a 5-star review. Thank you so much. This really made my day. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso. That's at JamesIntrocaso. You can also check out all the game design stuff I'm doing, the worlds I'm building, and more over at worldbuilderblog.com. I'm putting up a couple of previews of late of the Burn Bright role-playing game. That's a role-playing game that I created with Jim McClure, Darcy Ross, and Kat Cool for the Roll20 virtual tabletop. You are definitely going to want to check this out when it comes out. It's science fantasy, and it is awesome. I have been pouring hours and hours into it over the last 2 years. So go check it out at worldbuilderblog.com. It'll get you all hyped for the release when it comes out. And I can't wait to hear what people think of it. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget, RPGs are like sex. Hey everybody, before we go, I wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble was brought to you by Rob 2E. That's right, Rob 2E, but he loves 5E. Why? Because he has 32% market share of the virtual tabletop titles on DM's Guild. That's right. He wants to help game designers convert their RPG products into Fantasy Grounds files for sale on the site. And the best part is that when you collaborate with Rob, there's no cost. He does all the work, so there's zero risk. Rob gets paid via a revenue split, and he maintains the files. So if you have any updates or changes you make, bam, he makes them to virtual files too. They're sold separately, so it doesn't affect PDF sales or your own revenue whatsoever. Rob's a community developer for Fantasy Grounds, and he's on their social media team. He knows the virtual tabletop platform, people. He knows it very, very well. Trust me. He's been publishing on the DM's Guild since the beginning, since January 2016. That's when DM's Guild launched. So guess what? He knows the DMs Guild very well. If you'd like to see some of the projects Rob has worked on, just search for his name on DMs Guild. That's Rob Twohy. That's ROBTWOHY. Rob Twohy. He. But he, if he was spelled HY. Anyway, Rob can be found almost anywhere on the internet as Rob Twohy. That's Rob numeral 2 little e. Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, Discord, Patreon. Listen, just Google him. He wants to work with you, and you want to work with him. It's going to make your life easy. It's great. There's no reason not to do it. Go check him out. Rob Twohy.